Hey, it's been a long time since I made a video. Um, the topic of this video is going to be a little, I guess, controversial, as um, I'm talking about trans athletes because it's been talked about for the past several years, and why not? And what my take of it on it is, uh, I basically I can. It's hard for me not to side with the biological women on this issue who don't want to share locker rooms with, um, particularly with intact males, meaning, uh, trans, you want to say trans women who haven't had any, I guess, surgery or whatever. If you want to, I guess we would assume that. Um, uh, I'm pretty much pro. I'm like pro trans. I am, but I think it's, um, if there's a difference between, this is where I'm getting at, gender and sex, if they are different things, um, gender being something you can change, it's something like within you, and sex being like how you're born biologically. Okay. And with regards to basically professional sports, you know, trans women, and I think it's a fact pretty much. I mean, as far as from every, you know, uh, just based on the fact that men are born, they tend to be taller, they tend to have, more bone density, muscle mass, everything. They're stronger, and uh, and so on and so forth. So you just can't do anything about that. So if someone is born male and they spend some years of their life, I don't know how many. I'm just guesstimating. Let's say they start transitioning even in their teens, they still have, that basically, um, that, male structure overall. That's how they're built, and you can't change that. So I think to say that trans women don't have an advantage in women's sports is, I don't believe in that at all. I really don't. I think it's I think that's just absurd. And with that said, I am sensitive to trans issues and everything like that. I mean, I'm not saying that. I mean, if someone wants to identify as another gender, that's totally their business. And, I don't think anybody should, and they should be respected. Um, and I know that's difficult to say, oh, they should be respected, except for, with regard to sports. Um, and there's been, like Leah Thomas is one of the most well-known examples. I mean, she not played, she swam, and uh, she didn't really. And as far as I know, she's an intact male, and it seemed a little ridiculous. She was swimming against college girls, um, and it's this is the athlete that Riley Gaines spoke up about because she swam against her, and or swam on the same team. I think I'm not quite sure, uh, but I I really just don't. I just for I think it's caused more problems and it's doing more harm than good. It's just not really. Um, I just don't think it's. I don't think they. If you're going to transition, I think you have to accept certain things, and there's certain things. I mean, there's things that I can't do. I mean, just because, like, okay, I'm a straight white male, that does not mean my life is like, okay, you can basically do everything. I can't, you know, um, basically. I mean, I can't, like, let's say, for example, I mean, if I wanted to go into the women's locker room, of course I couldn't go to the women's locker room unless I was Donald Trump or something. Um, well, he went into the, I think, Miss Teen USA pageant dressing room. I don't know. unrelated, of course. That's a whole other video. But um, with that said, I don't really think like that's sort of like, just because you're trans, you should be able to um, go into women's spaces. I mean, because I don't have the right to do that. I don't know why they should have the right to do that. That's sort of a special privilege to basically do that. That's not like you have a right to do that. You're granted a special privilege to do that and play women's sports. And I don't, and I think even the ones that don't say anything, if you polled over 90% of women in sports, college or professional, don't want this. I can guarantee you. And um, I think that's where it's at. And they a lot of these women, they're probably liberal and they do care about trans issues and stuff like that, but they really don't want to share the locker room with like someone who hasn't had bottom surgery or whatever, and they're coming in there with they still have their dick or something, and it's just fucked up. Um, and I know that sounds like I'm being very crude about talking about this, and a lot of people have way different views than I do. People who are, I mean, I'm liberal, but I guess I'm not. Um, I just this to me it doesn't comport with logic, so I kind of it's hard for me to just give it a green light and say yeah everything's okay. Um, once you transition into a woman, you can or say that you're a woman, or identify as a woman, you can live totally as a woman, and you know I don't know, maybe like I don't know if it's if you totally transition and have have taken all the hormones and everything like that, and you've had all the surgery. Um, could you then do that? I don't really know. I don't have the answer to that, but I don't. You know, if you are sort of just identifying, I mean, anyone can do that, and that's the problem with it. I mean, it's kind of a slippery slope. It's and I do believe in gender dysmorphia, and I think some people are kind of basically, for lack of a better way of putting it, born in the wrong body. But I, I don't. I mean, 20 years ago, probably, if like trans people or people like that wanted to play sports, it'd be like no way, and even liberal people would be like no. Um, Probably, at least most of them. And now it's a matter of we're trying to save people's feelings, and they come back at you by saying that, well, trans people are so susceptible to suicide and everything like that, so you have to um, uh, affirm their gender in every way that you can. And one of those ways of affirming their gender is by including them in sports the way that they have been included. And um, it's but it's this small portion of the population that trans people are affecting a much larger portion of the population, which are females that play sports. And so I guess in conclusion, I mean, I really don't have an answer to this or anything like that or a solution, unless maybe they just have trans sports where trans athletes compete, and maybe that's the way to go, because um, I don't really see how this is like working. I think it's going to be, you know, they're right now they're just forcing it on um, college and professional sports, and it's um, because they're saying, well, this is discrimination if you don't allow them to compete or in sports and everything, and it's I mean, it would, if I wanted to compete in women's sports, I of course could not do that, even though um, these other trans women who were born male, they can compete, but they were still born male. And just because you identify as a woman, does that give you the right to compete in women's sports? I mean, I think that's the big question that they haven't really answered to any satisfaction. They just kind of, um, right now, it's just more or less an experiment. I think that it's kind of failing. But that's pretty much all I'll have to say about that. I'm sure there's going to be some hateful comments below. Um, but anyway, that's my thoughts on trans athletics, or yeah, trans people getting into women's sports. And I didn't really talk about trans men competing in men's sports, but I guess that isn't as much of a problem because you never hear them talk. Nobody's ever talking about that. And but I think it's um, what's going on now is like people are just too if you're kind of like just have some issue with it, you're kicked out. You can't be a liberal anymore, and people are allowed. They're afraid to speak up about it, and because they don't want to be lumped in with conservatives, who've been very hateful towards trans people, and I think they have been hateful towards trans people. I would agree with that, and I don't agree with the conservatives' stance on trans people. Um, I just have a few, there's just some issues that are up in the air for me personally about it, even though it doesn't really affect me because I'm much older and I'm not playing sports and I'm not a woman. So, um, but those are my thoughts on it. Uh, if you happen to watch this video, comment below and please subscribe. I have a lot of videos from my old show um, that ended like a couple years ago, and uh, please, watch some of those. I guess they're kind of entertaining, some of them. So take care.